Hey everyone, today I want to make a video to accompany the release of the Syncussion sample pack. So I've just made that sample pack, it's up for grabs on my Bandcamp as usual. Plenty of single hits and loops. Last time on the DFAM I made a video focused on the instrument, building a loop and crafting the sound on the instrument. I think it would be a bit boring to do exactly the same thing on the Syncussion. This time I wanted to start from the samples directly because that's, if you buy the sample packs, that's what you're gonna get. So this will be a video more focused on processing and Ableton, and I want to deconstruct basically the two demo tracks I've made that you can hear on Bandcamp. Yeah, basically you have Ableton, you can find the sample pack in your library, samples, Syncussion samples, and this is what it looks like: hats, kicks, loops, blah blah blah, loop perk, loop sub bass, and toms. And I've used 6 samples to make that loop. And here's the first one. So the first one, I've used a kick, but it actually comes from the percussion loops. I can't remember which one it is exactly, but there's definitely an affected loop. So that's one of the FX ones. Oh, actually, that's number 4. You get a longer loop. I've loaded it in simpler. I'm going to use simpler a lot. If there are any experienced Ableton users watching this, I'm sorry, I'm not really good at Ableton and I don't really work that way usually. But yeah, if you see any glaring mistakes, don't hesitate to say it in the comments. I've loaded my kick in simpler. I've chosen a different starting point than the very beginning because I just wanted that kick mainly. I used the old piano roll to make a pattern. So a kick on the 1, here and here, a bit higher and shorter. And that turns into sound like this. There's basically no effects at all. You change the pattern, it's going to change the sound. It sounds better like this, obviously, but you can make it denser. Whatever you do, you don't have to use the piano roll. You can do something else. You can change the starting point. You can even try different samples if you'd like from the pack. Where is it again? Oops, samples. We can try a load, a different one. This is the one I've chosen. I think it makes for a good basis for a broken beat type loop. And yeah, basically since it's already processed more or less, there's not much to do. The second sound has a bit more effects on it. If we just listen to that one, it's actually just a loop. And did I do something here? No. Most of the, you can hear, we're not hearing everything all the time. That's because I've made quite a lot of tweaks into Shaperbox, and we're going to talk a lot about Shaperbox in that video because I think it's a wonderful plugin / tool to edit your samples, because you can go in here and do edits here with clip and, you know, change the gain, blah blah blah, like this. But I don't know, it works for sure, but I think Shaperbox is a much better interface for this. And here, you know, you can see you can change the bars, and I've put it to 8 bars. So basically you get the sound here and you can draw your own envelopes, and you have quite a few different modules. This is the volume module. So this is exactly like changing the gain in the clip. I'm saying here go loud and here go silent and here go loud again. There's a fairly heavy-handed comp at the beginning of the chain because these samples are super dynamic and clicky, as you can see on the waveform. There's this time box, which time is sort of I don't know. I don't really know what it does. It puts things backwards, and it's interesting, but it's not easy to understand. So yeah, basically, if we delete Shaperbox, the sound sounds like this, which is nice, but it was coming too often. And after a while, it would be a bit annoying. So if we remove all the plugins, the core sound, so that's the loop, basically. That's another of the affected loops in the percussion loops. So first plugin is a delay. Just a preset from Timeless 3, which I've spoken about this plugin quite a few times in previous videos. That's really my favorite plugin delay at the moment. I think I've tweaked it a little, maybe added a different envelope to the feedback, or I'm not sure. Maybe I haven't done anything. Maybe tweak the EQ. That's without. Bear in mind, there's already effects on the original loop. Then, as I said, because it's really dynamic, I wanted to squash the dynamics and really get rid of the heavy click. Compressor, again, probably my most used compressor in plugin form. Really good, dependable, reliable. It made me want to buy the boxes. I didn't buy the compressor because it's insanely expensive, but I did get the Expressor, which is much more affordable and still really, really good. Then the Pro Q, because this thing has a lot of low end that you don't necessarily hear, but it's good to remove it anyway. Again, Pro Q, classic, using it all the time. And yeah, so Shaperbox really turning that sound into something that's occurring less, and it adds that the compressor makes it do this like a breathing sound, which I really love. It doesn't make sense a lot by itself, but when it's with everything together and there's a compressor on the two bus that really pumps everything, it has a really cool effect, I think. That's our two loops together. Then we have a loops with hats. So this is a loop of hats, which there's quite a few different ones with velocity baked in. So it's a longer loop, and you can, with different notes, again, I think I've used the piano roll, just clicking on notes here to make a pattern. And so depending on the note, it will change it will choose a different slice in the slice mode of the simpler sampler of Ableton. So you get these different hats, which is cool, and you can add some MIDI utility, which adds some random velocity on top of that. Here's again another Timeless 3. This one is special effects, rhythmic, funky drummer. I don't think I've changed anything. I almost never used the rhythmic ones, but I felt like it worked here. Just give it some movement. So that's our first hat. It's going a bit into the Eventide Eclipse, but honestly, we could do without. Same with here. Here we have a second hat, and this one I've used just a single hit, but I've sequenced it with MDD Snake, which is a copy of René in Make Noise René, I guess everybody knows. You have an envelope here for... Would be cool to modulate this actually with an LFO, easily doable. And yeah, basically that's exactly the same. You get the notes, So the notes are just going to change the pitch this time, not the slice, because there's just one hit, different gates and different velocities. And you can change the patterns. Like in Rene, basically. You can do everything that you think is cool. You can probably also modulate this with an LFO. And there's a little shimmer verb. Not much, just to give it a tail. It's not even EQ, but there's a filter here, and I've put it in high pass here, so it's high passing the low frequency. And here in the controls, I've done somewhat the same, but there's also an envelope in that one. That makes it shoot a bit higher in pitch by half an octave. So 2 hats together. I mean, there's pretty much straight hats, but makes some atmosphere as well as some rhythmic stuff. Yeah, I wanted a third hat, so the third one is just your classic offbeat hat. So I've just put those into the piano roll, and once again, it's a super simple single hit, which I've transposed because otherwise it's quite high. And same filter to filter the low end, and little plate from Sound Toys. I don't know, I never used this one. I don't know, I used that one here, but really low amount. Again, just to make it fit into the mix a bit, I guess. If we listen everything together, so you can hear that loop with the heavy shaper box action starting to take shape and make sense in the loop, with the dynamics still. And I mean, to me, that's brings the sense of excitement in that loop. And the last one is actually a kick sample that I've heavily processed with all these. Most importantly, it's a kick sample that I've sequenced with Steppic. So to make it sound like more tuned percussion rather than a kick, I send a pitch envelope by -6 cents. Steppic is exactly the same thing I use for my OB6, and you can use it for anything. You can use it for VST or with your external instruments like the OB6. You can choose the gates. As you can see, I've put a lot of random, so that pattern is not always repeating. Some velocity, some random and velocity, and octaves, blah blah blah, to get, if not constantly moving, at least evolving pattern of percussions. So that's my kick sample. That's number 20 in the kick, and that's something I don't know where I've seen that. Maybe a friend showed it to me, but it's not something I would have thought of myself, you know, to sequence a single hit. But I think it works quite well. You can do it with hats. I know a lot of people do that with another Max for Live sequencer. It's a bit like Metropolis. And you can choose the number of ticks. And yeah, you know, you get different results. This time I've used Steppic, but this one is free, contrary to Steppic. It's interesting to sequence samples like this. I've never really thought of that. I used to use samples like this, you know, as a loop and make it loop by itself. Like I said, I'm a bit of a noob when it comes to using purely the DAW to create music. I usually just record and use effects in the DAW. But it's interesting to try new things. And then we give it movement with Timeless 3 again. This one is heavily panned, as you can hear, going from left to right, right to left, who knows. Then as you can hear, there's a lot of low frequency afterwards to kick sample. So I've removed all this with a pretty sharp 24 dB per octave EQ. And so it sounds more like a percussion. And then a reverb again, probably not one sound with that reverb in here. A bass room, again, I think I haven't touched the preset at all. I know FabFilter just came out with the Pro R2. A friend of mine has it. I've tried it. It's really nice, beautiful interface. Quite a few new controls. I haven't bought it myself yet. But if you want to buy one pack of samples, just make it the FabFilters. They're just insanely good and very, very versatile. These would be my recommendation for plugins to use with samples. Heavily recommend Shaperbox, and especially since they came out with the reverb as well. And I heavily recommend FabFilter. So let's listen to everything together. So these are really dry, and that's really not going to be fair to this loop, but now I'm going to engage the Expressor and the Overstayer and the X Filter 500 from Elysia. So as you can hear, there's absolutely zero gain matching. I've had a lot of fun smashing that loop into the Overstayer, lots of distortion, pushing the parametric EQ to make that reverby breathing sound pop out, and just go crazy with the compressor in parallel to just have that loop breathe a lot. So everything is running here. Let's just stop all these. And here's the final result. So here's the loop. I have to say, of course, the overstayer, expressor, and X filter make a world of difference. It would be insane to say the contrary. I'm sure you can get in the ballpark using more compressor, vibey compressors from VSTs, distortions as well. I'm lucky to have those, so of course I have a lot of pleasure putting those on the master and, you know, having fun. But there's nothing that stops you from getting a similar result with VSTs, and just experiment and go a bit overboard. It's fun. Hope you enjoyed that one, and I'll do another one with a more classic 4/4 techno loop with samples that are a bit less mangled.